recording. Thanks for the reminder. Last time we totally forgot to record and we got through half the half the event and then we're like, awesome. Okay. So with that, here's our agenda for tonight. Lots of stuff. And let's get into it. So for those of you new joining us, QTBIPOC Design is an organization that provides free education, mentorship, and networking opportunities to queer designers of color. And so for this year, we are hosting monthly UX night sessions. And in the future, we're looking at launching our free UX Bootcamp. And then from there, we have so many other things planned for our community. Looking forward to it. And with that, would love to introduce our speaker for this evening. Sterling is an artist and designer of trans and queer experiences. Their history with sexuality, gender, and mental health inspires them to create work that speaks on what is required for humans to show up authentically in this world. They specialize in playful and colorful work that is informed by the past, but also explores how we can know old constructs in new ways. Through authentic expression, they create spaces that facilitate healing and call into question frameworks that no longer serve the collective. And with that, really excited to introduce Sterling, and really excited to hear about their unconventional way of entering design.
I actually have no background in art. I mean, formally, right? Academia in art or design or anything. I actually studied biology in undergrad. I got that degree. And then I went into sales for about 7 years. And it was not the best for my mental health. It really did a number on me, to be honest. And so I really had to do a lot of work to understand why I thought this was the life I had to live, and why I thought my passions or what really like drives me wasn't good enough to sustain life for me and like to make money and to thrive. Um, so a lot of my work focuses around that relationship of kind of how we've been taught to survive and like what methods we can use to like eat and live and keep going, but not really become the people we want to be or really just show up as ourselves in the world. So a lot of my work, Liz asked me a lot of questions about my work on our phone call, and it's very, I would say it's very childlike. A lot of cartoons, a lot of colors. And that really just comes from, I kind of like to use my childhood as a template for the life I'm building now. I just remember myself when I was younger and like how much fun I had. And I was just always happy. And that's the life I want as an adult as well. So I like to really explore why we think that's not good enough or why we think we're not good enough to explore our passions. Like what have we inherited that's really stopping us from showing up in the world? So even though my my work's mainly cartoons, that's kind of the energy behind it. That's honestly the energy I bring to anything, whether it's a mural or a painting or I'm helping a client. Um, Clients always come and they're like, "Oh yeah, I just want something really, really simple." And then you get to talking to them and you realize they want nothing simple and they want something totally different than what they originally intended. And I find that sort of dynamic happening a lot in life. You think you want one thing, and then as you explore yourself, you get to know yourself again. You realize you want something else. So yeah, that's kind of the energy I bring to everything I do. Um, and I'm just also really trying to show up for myself. I on our phone call, Liz asked like, why do you do things in so many different mediums? Because I do wood stuff, I do murals, paintings, a bunch of stuff, graphic design as well. So it's mainly coming from that place of I don't have to pick one thing for the rest of my life to survive. Like I'm allowed to explore this life as I see fit. I can do whatever I want to do. Um, and yeah, I think my experience as a queer person and as a trans person really helped me to get there because I mean, technically, like how I was raised, I'm not really supposed to be here. I'm not really supposed to be doing these things. I'm not supposed to be this type of person. So once I got through those hurdles in my life, when I realized like, hey, I'm queer, hey, like I'm trans and I'm gonna do this, and like that's it. It really opened up the door for me to just explore everything in my life and to really like determine what's best for me and to prioritize that as well. I think growing up with these identities, we often think that we can't do things of because of how it might affect other people. And that's just self-sabotaging as well. So yeah, that's kind of my story. I would love to know more about you guys. Did anything resonate? Where are you guys in your life? You know?
While we think about questions, I'm going to drop Sterling's portfolio for you guys to check out and pick around and maybe spark some more questions in there as well. Check out the art style. Check out how they're presenting themselves to the world. And to maybe start us off with questions, I'm interested because we did talk a lot about mental health and being present and stuff like that. How do you deal or have you had to deal with anxiety around not having a background in art as you show up for clients?
Anxiety.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's actually very interesting because for a while, I thought I wasn't allowed to make art. I thought I wasn't an artist because every time I would try to do it, my brain would just beat me up the entire time. Like constantly tell me I'm not good enough, like I'm not allowed to do this, like this is a waste of your time. And so what I had to learn is just to let that go, like that's not my voice, that doesn't come from me. Um, and I'm just actively rejecting that narrative. So when it comes to my work, I like to be very detached from the outcome. I find that when you get too detached to what you think you want it to look like or what you think it needs to look like to justify putting in all this time into something, you kind of dilute the process. It's not as much fun. So when so when you initially messaged me and
Mm-hmm.
you asked that this group was about career planning, I was very like hesitant because I very actively don't don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because after I graduated, I went through a really rough time where I thought I needed to know everything that was happening in my life. And if I didn't know everything that was happening in my life or it couldn't explain how, then something was wrong with me and I was just not a good enough person.
Mm-hmm.
So I've definitely spent a lot of time divesting from the notion that I need to know how I'm going to get to where I'm going. I honestly just show up and I do what excites me and what brings me joy.
Mm-hmm.
And I've developed a relationship with myself enough to trust that I know where I'm going. So that shows up a lot in my artwork, just because you're spending so much time with yourself. You really have to face that internal narrative, and like actively engage with how you treat yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which is again why I like to do such colorful and fun things, to very like shut up. Like I'm
Yeah.
gonna do this style and I'm gonna love it.
Yeah. Yeah. How does your identity as a trans or a queer designer, how has it been navigating that while also trying to navigate just being a designer?
It's I think the greatest impact it's had is on myself and
Hmm.
what in the beginning what I thought I was capable of. Like I
Hmm.
thought I can't do this. Like I'm black, I'm trans, I'm all this. Like nobody's gonna like this work. No one's gonna really take me seriously. It was kind of like to keep me safe. I felt like I had to be small and not
Hmm.
seen.
Hmm.
And so that like really harms me a lot, like thinking you can't show up in this world or thinking there's no place for you in this world is a lot to carry. And so honestly, like as I move through that, and I have a great therapist, so we talk about those things. And then as I learn to navigate that space, I feel like now I'm just in the position where I'm going to do whatever I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I do value myself, and because I've done all these things people tell me I can't do
Hmm.
or be, I've
Hmm.
already done it. So what else do you think I can't do?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's honestly a great source of freedom for me now, because like my brain has the proof that I can do whatever I want to do. it'd be great. Like I'm great now.
Yeah.
So I definitely enjoy it, and I'm grateful for the experience.
Awesome. Uh, so because you're able to show up authentically, because you trust yourself, because you're able to look back and say, I've done this already, it's your method of not planning ahead works for you. Um, how do you react when you hear people say things like, what's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan?
I have a best friend and she loves 10-year plans, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're like this.
Don't come for
And that
me.
works for her. And I totally respect that for her, love her. It's great for her. It's not great for me. Like
Mm-hmm.
it is when I just feel, for me, it seems limiting, like I feel like the world we live in is so vast. Why would my brain be able to calculate everything for the next 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
That just doesn't resonate with me personally. I
Mm-hmm.
also think it cuts me off from possibility, like feeling like I need to control the outcome and like I need to control what's happening next and thinking I'm less of a person because I can't. My
Yeah.
brain physically can't.
Yeah.
Like, why would I think I'm a bad person because of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I understand it. I
Mm-hmm.
respect it. I think it
Mm-hmm.
works for some people. It
Mm-hmm.
just doesn't work for me. And all the time I spent trying to be like that just caused me more harm. So I generally just don't do it. I
Mm-hmm.
focus on how I feel now,
Mm-hmm.
what makes me happy now, what
Mm-hmm.
excites me now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that'll just inform my path as I progress.
So, kind of staying on that same thread, how do you recognize when you are causing yourself harm, so to speak, within design?
I feel it like mainly in my body, and this takes practice, but
Mm-hmm.
like when I am beating myself up or doing something that's out of alignment with what I know I should be doing or the person I am, I feel it in my body. Mainly like when I get anxious, I feel it in my head. Things get
Mm-hmm.
very dense. And so
Yeah.
I know at this point in time to divest, like I'll
Mm.
just stop doing that thing.
Mm.
But in the beginning, it was mainly just practicing awareness of my body and like the differences. Like if I would do one thing, how would that make me feel? And if I did another thing, how did that make me feel? And make that comparison. And that's kind of how I learned how to guide myself through these different things.
Gotcha. I kind of want to kind of get a little bit more concrete. We've been very abstract here.
Yeah.
So thinking about how you like to use different mediums because
Mhm.
expression, exploration. Talk to us about the most recent project you had to do and what that was like, taking it on from ideation to completion.
Yeah. So the last project I am working on a mural.
Yes, yes, yes.
So my father has OCD, but he doesn't know he has OCD. He doesn't let me paint on his walls.
Gotcha, gotcha.
So I actually built a wall,
Uh,
and that was hard as hell. I'm never doing that again. But I intentionally did it because it was hard, because I want that evidence for my brain to
hmm,
prove to it that I can do whatever I want to
hmm,
do. Here are all these examples of things you told me I couldn't do, but I did
hmm,
anyway. Um, and then I have an iPad Pro, so
hmm,
I sketch up a bunch of things on my iPad Pro. Then I project it onto the actual wall. I trace, I paint, and it's the actions themselves, like painting or drawing or like, that's not what's difficult for me. What's most difficult for me is when a project starts to go astray and
hmm,
my brain's like, what the hell are you doing?
hmm,
Like,
hmm,
who do you think you are? You're not really this thing you think you
hmm,
are. Why are you doing this? So it's more of the relationship I have with myself and like navigating that space with my brain to allow me to show up and to do all these different things and these different mediums, to get it to sort of take a step back and just witness what I'm actually doing and how I know it's trying to keep me safe, but it's not actually doing that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. How do projects go astray?
They don't. That's the thing. They don't go astray. Your brain just
Oh,
tells you it
oh
does. You know what
snap!
I
Dropping
mean?
knowledge. Yeah.
Like, and I think I've learned this through repetition and like making different pieces of work. There's always a point in like a piece where it looks hideous. And that's where like your brain tells you like, divest in this, like we're not doing
Mm-hmm.
this. This is not
Mm-hmm.
who we are. But if you just keep revisiting it and keep working it and keep moving things around, eventually you get to a point where you're happy with it. But it never really goes astray. You're just in a different part of the process, even if your brain tells you something else.
I like how you talk about your brain in this like third party way. Like, talk to me about how you got to this point where you are.
Got there.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a meditator. I am
Mm-hmm.
firm believer in meditation.
Mm-hmm.
It really works out for me. And the main point of like the type of meditation I do is to witness the conscious mind and witness what it does and like how it navigates and be able to recognize patterns in it and like how it moves throughout the world. And so why I talk about it in like this sort of third person perspective is because I feel like there's a part of me that is watching my brain try to keep me safe and try to help me navigate this world. But I have to identify that that's not me, that's just the brain doing its thing. And so I like to have that separation because it's made it easier for me to just create things and to exist in this world. Because for a while I thought I was my brain, it was very hard because my brain wasn't nice. Like my brain was with critiquing everything. Never thought I was good enough. Never thought I was doing enough. Never thought I could like show up in this world as myself. So if you think that's who you are, that's tough. That's really rough. And so like through these different practices, meditation mainly, and healthy relationships, I've been able to sort of create that space to witness the difference between myself and what my brain wants to do.
Oh man. How did you get into meditation? Everyone kind of has their different journey towards it.
Yeah, my therapist introduced it. And at first it's like, I'm not doing this. Like, this is not for Black people. Like, stuff. I'm not doing this. My therapist was a Black woman and she's like, just try it, see what happens.
Yeah.
And initially I just didn't. It was kind of like this off and on again relationship. And then as time progressed, I started to do it more and more because I was able to witness the difference in how I could show up for myself as I did meditate more. And so eventually I was able to get my conscious mind on board with like, hey, like this thing is really good for us. You get to rest when we do this. So we're going to show up and do this. But that took years, like I have a lot of friends now who I do suggest meditation. I suggest it to my friends, my family as well. And they're like, oh no, that's not for me. And they think because they don't want to do it right now in this moment, that something's wrong with them or it's not for them. But really it's just a progression. Like as time goes, you'll see what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And so that's what meditation's been for me.
Gotcha. I have, of course, a million other questions, as you know, from our last phone call. I could talk forever, but I do want to open it up because I want to give other people a chance. If you have any questions or if anything's resonating with you, just type it in the chat and we'll see it. But kind of sticking onto this narrative that we're talking about meditation, talking about yourself, talking about navigating those feelings. And we touched a little bit on it before. When your brain's trying to self-sabotage you. What is your way to navigate through that? Is it meditation? Is it to dive back into the art?
It's really that process of separating myself from my conscious mind. And I got there through meditation and I do practice it through art as well. But now it's just getting to the point where I see it talking crap about me, identifying it, also having a certain level of compassion for it, because the job of the mind is just to keep you safe, is like just so you don't die. And I understand that it's trying its best to do that, but it doesn't know how to do that. Because for the mind, keeping you safe is keeping you the same, and that's not what I'm doing. So I try to approach it with a lot of compassion, like, hey, I know you're doing your best. I'm going to do this thing anyway. And like, you can talk your crap, but like, you don't get to be in control here. So that's what that looks like.
Absolutely. My final question, I'll limit myself to this, is you spoke earlier about the energy and being happy while you're working and finally getting yourself free there. Can you just talk to me about what if the energy is not there? Now, it's not necessarily your brain saying, oh, you can't, but you're just not in the mood. You woke up, you're just not in the mood. What do you do? Do you say no, or do you go back to it?
Yeah, I honestly go rest. Like if it's not there, then I also take that as a sign that like I need to chill. Because I feel like a lot of the time with like how our world's set up, we think we always have to be doing something. We always have to be producing something. We are what we produce.
Speak on it, yeah.
And I do get caught up in that sometimes. So if the energy's off and if it's just not there, then I'll go back to bed or I go do something fun. You know what I mean? And like that is also valid. Rest is valid. Enjoying your time here is valid. You don't always have to be making something. And if you're always, in my experience, if I'm always making something, if I'm always focused on the work, the quality of the work just declines. You know, like for me, rest and joy and the things that make me happy definitely inform my work and make it better, in my opinion.
Oh my, I'm so glad you touched upon that. Like, it isn't always about producing,
Like
right? It is. It's a lie to keep you producing.
Exactly. Like it's just made up. It's so absurd. I like sometimes I really think about how we like ask 5-year-olds, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, why are you asking a 5-year-old how they want to labor for the rest of their lives? Like that's so absurd to me. So actively divesting from that has definitely been really important for me.
Gotcha. Oh, we have a question from Steven. It says, what inspires you? Any design or other designers? I love this question because I kind of already know the answer and I wanna have Sterling say it again.
What inspires me? I really just like playful things. Really childlike in a sense. I just feel like that's for me and my relationship with myself. That's when I was the most authentic version of myself previously. Like I just showed up as me and I did whatever I wanted to do. So that really informs my work. I also enjoy work from the past, which was really interesting for me to navigate initially because I think we all know old cartoons were incredibly racist. So it's like me as this Black person now, like having an affinity for these images, not the racist ones, but like the style, you know. It's like, am I allowed to do this? Like, am I allowed to enjoy these things? And I feel like I got to a point where it's like, I'm not going to censor my expression or limit my joy just because white people don't know how to act sometimes. You know, like that's absurd to me. And so I'm just, yeah, I it's generally just whatever makes me happiest and makes me feel the best. That inspires me the most.
Yeah. Boom, mahogany coming through. When/how did you begin selling your art and merch online? What was that process like? Great question. Thanks,
I
mahogany.
started selling it, I want to say earlier this year. And honestly, there's no like big trick or like big launch or anything. Like you make the work and you put it out there. And I was surprised when like people started buying it or people would reach out to me like, hey, I really like this. Just because like, we've already talked about how my brain says, no, nobody's gonna like this. What are you doing? That was not the feedback I was getting. So it's really just like showing up and putting the work out there, and whoever it resonates with, they'll buy it or they'll reach out to you or they'll talk to you or they'll want you to do work for them. The process, I mean, I made a website, I made a TikTok, Instagram. That's really it. It was mainly getting myself to actually put the work out there and be seen. That was the most energy consuming part.
Yeah. I'll put a tag out there. I'm glad you're on TikTok because that's how I found you. I wouldn't have found you on Instagram, wouldn't have found
TikTok.
you, right? Right?
Like,
Put your work out there and put it out there
yeah,
to multiple places, it sounds like.
exactly.
Gotcha.
How do you navigate discovery in your process?
Yes. Thank you, Sean. How do you navigate discovery in your process?
Discovery. Do you mean like with a client or just with like myself in general?
Ooh, follow up. Okay, yeah, Sean. Follow up to your question.
So
How do you mean?
client, gotcha. Okay. So I've been in sales for like 7 years. That's a really long time for me. And with talking, It's honestly just a conversation. I think like as the designer or the illustrator or whatever you do, you have an idea of what the process looks like, and what's going to be asked of you. But the person you're speaking to, that's not what they do. They have no idea. They have not an idea of like what this process looks like. So as I ask questions, I really try to understand what it is they see in their head. Also like who they're talking to, like who are they trying to reach? Like what's the language they're trying to approach them with, like what their objective is. But I really do my best to make sure that that person feels seen, you know, like I really like took the time out to like understand every aspect of their vision, because I work a lot with people who are like making their own brands, and they they tend to know what they want because again they see it as an extension of themselves. So I like to put in that extra work to really understand like who it is you are and what you're trying to create. So I just ask questions about like are there any is there any particular style they like, is there any like message behind it. I even ask them about their own experience because like a lot of the time the work we create is informed by our own experience. Just sometimes I make mood boards too because some people do not know what they want. They have not an idea of how to articulate their vision to you. So I do definitely like to make mood boards because it makes it easier. Like I get to put a bunch of different styles in front of you and kind of like refine what you like the best and what you don't like. And I think that does answer another one of those questions when clients don't actually know what they want, which is honestly very common. Like, this isn't what you do. You know what I mean? Like this is not your area of expertise. So it makes sense if you don't have the language to articulate to me what you want. That's why I always like to refer to other references, you know, like pictures, fonts, styles. What did it take for you to find your design style? Did you ever have moments where something just clicked? What did it take? Honestly, it's for me, it's just been a process of just showing up for the work and just continuing to show up for the work and not really like trying to find a design style. I feel like for me anyway, when I try to find something or try to do something or like have an outcome in mind, I don't get there and it's not for me. So I do consume a lot of information, a lot of different styles, a lot of different things on the internet. And with time, like as I'm actively creating work, I'll think like, oh, I saw this one reference. Let me make this way. And then I'll pull up another reference and do it a different way. And as with time, as I continue to do that, a style kind of just emerged, I guess. Yeah. You have a series of pride themed triangular designs on your website. How did that come about? Is there significance in the triangle? What are you hoping to express with this series? Honestly, this is gonna sound really weird, but ninth grade geometry class, that's really it. I just remember being in ninth grade geometry class. We were learning about like infinite shapes and like different types of stuff, and I was like, wow, I really like this. And so when I was just chilling, honestly, here in my room, and I was just playing around with colors, and I was like, oh, like why don't I just put these two things together? And then I posted it on TikTok. I didn't think anybody was gonna like it. To be honest, it was so weird for me. Like, nobody was in ninth grade geometry class with me, you know. Um, but yeah, that's honestly it. It's just I just try to do what feels best and see what emerges from that. So I didn't go in there with any like particular idea I was trying to express or like trying to accomplish. I just wanted to do something I enjoyed. And people liked it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's see.
Yes, I go geometry.
Love it. I don't know why. I really don't. Um,
Oh, yeah.
Video game. With that in mind, do you draw from video? Oh, I love Cuphead. Uh, I see. And Devil Witch on Cuphead videos. With that in mind, do you draw from video games as part of your? Absolutely. And at first, I was very resistant to doing this, right? Because in my mind, like these characters already exist. Like, who are you to revisit this thing that already exists? And like, I don't know. I just didn't think I was allowed to do it. But as I was looking for inspiration more and more, I just realized I like this. Like I loved the Mario Kart. I had the red DS. And I also, as I said previously, I do like to use my childhood as kind of like a template for how I build my life now. And like I was always playing Mario Kart and Sonic and all these other things. So if I love it, if you love it, like why shouldn't I show up and do that? So yeah, some of my work though, like the Simpson stuff, it's on my Instagram. That's like very much me as an adult. I wasn't allowed to watch The Simpsons growing up. So like now that I'm grown and I can pay for my own Disney Plus, I'm gonna do whatever the hell I want. So a lot of it is part of that sort of like reclamation of myself, of like the things I loved, and also like the things I was told I wasn't allowed to have that I loved anyway. So yeah, that's where that comes from.
Awesome. I hope that this has been very insightful for people. I'm going to wrap us up because I have a feeling that the questions would just keep rolling, and we would just keep pulling all this information out of Sterling's brain. And we could do that forever, but we have so many other things to do today. So I do want to keep us on track and just say, I hope that this was helpful for you guys. And that, yes, the Instagram as well. Hope this was helpful for you all. Hearing other people's journeys, like I said at the top, I just think it's so important because there is no right or wrong way. And as Sterling has said many times, just show up and it will come. Oh, we got one last thing sliding in here. Okay. I'm going to read it just in case people don't have the chat open. More of a comment than a question from Sabrina. Something you said that really resonated with me was when you mentioned something along the lines of working on having a good enough relationship with yourself to trust where you're going / where you're headed. Exactly. Things in the world are really uncertain, even more so with myself, and I really appreciated hearing that. Fun emoji smiley face. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. So I'll say with that, final thoughts. Sterling, drop one more gem. Final thoughts. The last thing to hear from you.
Last thing?
Yeah, no, this sounds too final. Everyone go follow them on Instagram,
Okay.
but still, finalish thing.
Finalist thing. I think sometimes our brains just make life a little too complicated. I think it's been convinced that you can't really show up authentically, but you can. And if you just do that, honestly, your quality of life will just be so much better. Yeah.
Amen. I don't even say amen like that, but amen. Thank you. Thank you. If you would like, turn your sound on. Round of applause. Join me. If not, I feel it. I know I can feel it from you guys. But yeah. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Stephen because you got the roadmap, bud.
Oh, look at the emoji.
Yeah, that's next level Zoom stuff.
You hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Awesome. Sterling, thank you so much for your time, your chat. It was so great, so inspirational. The piece that I took away that I just really appreciated was the part of how you overcame feeling as though you couldn't do something. You couldn't explore that style because there was a certain stigma around it. And just kind of finding your own space in that, I think is really inspirational, especially in just so much of what we all do, which is going to spaces that we weren't occupying before, right? And so it's just really thankful and grateful for you to be here, creating your art and spending the time with us. Thank you. And Liz, awesome moderation. Yes. Cool. So let's get into the second part, which is going to be a short career coaching for UX. And so this can be pretty broad, pretty specific, really depends. If you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the comments below. I will keep it in this view for now so that I can still see the comments. If I go into presentation mode, everything just turns black. But first and foremost, as we go through thinking through UX, and just all these different types of roles, responsibilities. There's a lot of terms, right, that's thrown out in front of us to define what we do, who we are. UX, UI designer, product designer, UX developer, UX researcher. And my quick tip hack is take a look at the job description. Try to understand what they're looking for, because most of the time it really doesn't align with exactly what the task is. Product designer is something that came out in the past few years. UX wasn't even around in the past 5 years. And so really, in a nutshell, there's so many things you could do within design, and these different roles really don't encompass what you're exactly going to do. But to kind of help you figure out what these terms mean, just splitting up what UX, user experience, is in a nutshell, it falls into these 6 categories. UX, user experience. So this is around how do you create wireframes? How do you iterate on them, right? How do you create really low fidelity designs and work upon it? And also the umbrella term. But if we just talk about UX designer, that's typically what they're going to be doing. You have another a domain that's called information architecture. You could be an information architect. So this is around organizing data, taxonomy. So for example, if you had a huge website, right? Let's just say Amazon.com, for example, and you're doing an overhaul, a complete redesign of it, you would have information architects that would enter the foray to then just categorize and move around all the data sets so that it makes more sense logistically. They don't necessarily touch designs, but they do more of the data management perspective. UI, user interface, this is born out of interface design, GUI, graphical user interface, and this is the work of creating all the little icons, widgets, everything that you see in apps, websites, things that you interact with. And system design is the work of creating the cohesive language across an ecosystem. An ecosystem could be a single website, for example. So an example is Amazon again. If we design Amazon, what do all the buttons look like across the entire landscape of Amazon, right? So that is typically what a UI designer or a systems designer would do. UX strategy. So this is one level above UX, which is design thinking, right? It's a super popular term. Who knows what it means now? But design thinking is a methodology of iteration testing, rapid prototyping that is for essentially vetting a design to see if it's successful in the real world. UX strategy is really the thinking and concepting that goes into the design, trying to create a methodology into it. So as we think through what is successful design, right? UX strategy is really the brains powering what designs do we create, what do we test, and thinking through some of the stuff that comes out of UX research and putting it into the designs. UX research, this is the domain around just like testing, finding research, distilling it into insights, and using that to help empower market creation of the products or the designs that you're creating. And then lastly, UX engineering here. This is just the prototyping, right? If you see this pop up as a role, these are the people who actually create the designs into almost tangible products. But functional products. So there's a little bit of development involved, a little bit of being able to create something more tangible rather than you just see a pretty little design. And so these are kind of the high level buckets of the UX subdivisions. And so usually if you're looking at a career, this is a great place to just start looking and seeing what the job might entail. Cool. And then there are different levels, different hierarchies. At the end of the day, these are all just labels. We put so much weight on ourselves, right? With all of these words, and we're just like tormented by some of these words. And at the end of the day, they're just a way for the company to figure out how to divvy up work, right? A director in one company is going to really be different when you look at another company, right? And it's just really meant to identify who is maybe thinking up the work and who is maybe doing the production level work, right? But at a high level, just like breaking down the different tiers, a junior designer, typically this is their first role, right, in the design field, or they're making a change into a different career. An associate level, generally, junior can be closely associated with almost like an intern, but some new people can be hired at an associate level. So that's just the title list, like UX designer, for example, right, versus junior UX designer. But in terms of how much handholding is involved, a junior / intern is expected that they really can't deliver anything, right, without guidance, handholding. An associate level does need a little bit more. But as we talk about a senior designer, senior UX designer, these are the people who don't need as much handholding, and they're senior level production person who is able to take the ask and able to deliver on it. And really the biggest transition between like a junior / associate level to a senior level is, can you deliver, right, on what is asked just by getting the prompt? Or do you need additional handholding involved? Once you can make that big leap, then definitely you are a senior UX, senior designer level. At manager level, these are the people who have other people that they manage, that they oversee, and they could be a senior level production person still, or they could just be a manager. And a lot of tech companies, they deviate the different tracks. One becomes more just like a people manager, and one is a much higher level senior production person. So they're able to come in, ideate, think through the thoughts, and also act on it and deliver on it. But the people person that just manages the people, they're just really good at helping others to achieve the best and get the most out of their time. When you're lead / director level, this is when you are being brought into the room where the problem is and you're able to solution on it, right? So now, managers technically do that too, but a lead director level where they get the money from is usually being able to identify the solutions without help. So they're able to identify and also staff accordingly the people responsible to execute on the projects as well. And then when you are at the VP or the CDO level, the Chief Design Officer level, these levels are the ones who help really grow the business. So not just being able to create the solution, but being able to create the business validation, the business case studies to be able to ensure that the design is feeding into a much larger design architecture. Yeah, hopefully that was helpful. And the star animates, but here, here you go. It's a beautiful star. And just to kind of just wrap up the session, a couple things, just things I wish I knew. And I think this is really the big meat of it, with career coaching, how I help other designers to be the best that they can be, really to teach other people all the stuff that I wish I knew growing up as a designer. So the first and foremost, manage up. So this is around, any corporate environment, any setting where you're working with people who are over you, to manage up, meaning set up the meetings with them, right, on a proactive basis. Not waiting for them to lead your career where they want to take it, but you being the proactive driver of your career, and to essentially use them, leverage them where they can be the most impactful for you. So tactical things here will be to set up meetings with your manager, for example, every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and making sure you stay on top of it versus the other way around, right? Manage up to other vertical leads, right? So other departments, other people you work with, maybe set up not as occasional, but maybe once a month meetings with them so that you're able to keep track with what they're doing. When you get towards the more senior level, status director, all the way up, you're responsible totally just to be able to touch base, find out everything that's happening within the company. And if you could start this early on in your career, then you're set up for success later on. Raise your hand. So this is around wherever you are in your career, to ask people, what are you working on? What are you up to? And then when you have free time, just putting your hand up and just letting people know, hey, I have free time. People definitely love to take advantage of people's free bandwidth to execute on other projects. And this is a great opportunity to even get a foot in the door when you haven't occupied that space yet. And then create the space you love. This is a big part of what I do with companies that I've been a part of, but why I'm also a big part of driving the culture and everything as a part of it is because I wholeheartedly believe that we are in full control to create the spaces that we enjoy. Granted, there's a lot of stuff that is out of our control, but in terms of the immediate space of how do we show up with people? How do we even just like set up meetings, right? Like what is the premise of the meeting that we set up? Is it showing up into the meeting having fun? Like what is it? Uh, we have more impact to influence the spaces that we inhabit than we think. But within a company, right? Driving the cultural initiatives, creating the groups, creating the spaces, even like this space. This is a co-created space with so many people who are just so passionate about bringing equity into the design industry. We are all creating together the spaces that we want to see more of, that we love. And then 3 more. Leadership is about co-creation. So this is a huge learning opportunity for me, especially throughout my life as a designer. At one point I was thinking, well, I think leadership is about telling people what to do. Yeah, that's one thing, right? But I think leadership is actually about how do you become even better at co-creating things with other people. Especially when you run projects and you're like, oh, I don't know what's happening with the timeline, or I don't know what's happening. It's because the communication is not happening. Even timelines, deadlines, deliverables, what are they? They are a form of communication, right? A form of being able to set expectations with each other. And if we can start seeing these things as tools for us to just work better together, then they hold less gravitas or pain, or these heavy feelings that we attribute often to these things. But the best leaders, the strongest leaders, are always the people who are able to co-create with people. And what that means is finding out what people's strengths are and to relentlessly give them the space to do what they do best. Don't need to accept all the feedback. This is really important, especially myself, having experienced a lot of racism in my career, marginalization. You think like design community, it's just all the little weirdos and it's supposed to be like woke, but unfortunately, especially in the corporate environment, this isn't the case. And a lot of people unknowingly inherit a lot of the traumas, right? Racism, prejudice of the leaders that they have over them because they want to be leaders, and it's just this vicious cycle of, you're just like the hermit crab, right? Where you're just trying to find all these shells and you're trying to go into a shell thinking like that's the only way you can have a home, versus thinking you can chart your own path, create your own success. And what this means is it's okay not to agree with all the feedback you get, but don't forget, what you're here to do the job. While you're working with a client, sometimes you may not agree with them, right? You have a couple options, right? One, to step away from it, or two, continue to work with it. And sometimes the feedback, not in the more heavy sense, but sometimes it could be just they don't like the color that you chose, right? Especially when we're working with people, trying to help them achieve success. Let's go back to number one, which is around co-creation, right? How do we co-create with them? And sometimes, it's if they just want green for that by all means, give them that. And then maybe if you give them that, then maybe they might be able to push and pull on other things. And so it's figuring out how do we navigate the feedback so that we can get to someplace together rather than just being there by ourselves on an island. Um, and of course, embrace yourself, just in all the work we do, in all of these sessions, the coaching sessions or talks that we do, it's around just enjoying yourself, being authentic, and even just looking at Sterling's design journey, just how has Sterling embraced that in their art, their expression of it. And a part of it is also leveraging your previous experiences. And we have such rich experiences, not just with the past work that we've done, but also with our families, with our ancestries, with all the stuff that have led us into being who we are that we don't leverage in our work because we're often trying to fit the mold, right? Again, like the hermit crab, just like trying to fit into another shell. And really, where I see the most success with designers is when they're able to let go of the shackles that they put upon themselves, trying to shackle them to a goalpost, when in fact there was a much bigger goal somewhere else on the field. And by breaking out of the norm and just figuring out your own path of success is when you're able to hyper accelerate and get even just beyond where you're able to vision. Because at the end of the day, when you're able to create your own milestones, your own goals, and things that have nothing to do with anyone, that's when people really care about you, care about the work, are really passionate about what you're doing, because this is your true expression of yourself. Yeah. So with that was a mouthful. um, any questions? Any thoughts? Happy to answer any questions that we have. Went over a lot, just like labels, divisions within the domain, titles, and some things that that I wish I knew. um, Feel free to pop it into the comments below. It's a little silent. Let's see. Bum bum bum. Did that resonate? Yeah, I heard someone. Go for it.
That was just me laughing. Sorry.
Ah.
Sorry.
Did that resonate? I mean, did this resonate? Yeah. Distilling in a nutshell. Awesome. Bum 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 bum. You don't want to hear me sing. Comment. A lot of companies don't know what UX is still evident in their job descriptions. I've seen descriptions with coding experience and other things that are not pertinent to UX. Yes. So, yeah, definitely huge issue with especially startups, company who think they know what it is. Where I usually see kind of the pain point is a lot of people say UX and they also include visual design. Definitely that's a part of it, but what they're looking for is a UI designer, right? So yeah, highly recommended. Go through the job description, ask them what are they looking for. And if you are looking for, freelance gigs and just one-off jobs, ask them exactly what they think the final output should be working with them. And that should give you an indication of what type of role that you're looking for so you can align, right? I think UX, it's very global, encompassing a lot. And so, of course, people aren't going to get it right, and with, development, coding experience, that falls into the UX engineering realm. So there are much larger tech companies that do hire engineering that has a label of UX involved, which are more front-end developers, but front-end developers integrated more with user experience in testing methodologies. So they're creating usually stuff for prototypes and stuff like that. Yeah. Ask a lot of questions. Any other comments, questions? Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I've also noticed with like roles and titles and things that there is sometimes a role that's UI developer. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering like if those people are they still involved in like trying to design the visuals themselves, or do they take that from like a UX designer and then implement it?
Mm, good
Do you know?
question. Yeah. It I, off the top
Because
of
I'll
my
click on
head,
it and be
yeah.
like, oh, like UI, no, and then it says code and React, and I'm like, oh, so I've seen a couple of them like that. So I'm just curious about that kind of role too.
Yeah, I would say if you see developer in the role somewhere, it usually means that there is a bit of coding that's going to be involved and not just like a light, but I think it's going to be a heavy part.
Mhm.
UI to me, if it said UI's developer, if I was just to, like translate the words, it would mean somebody who does development work for the interface, right? The user interface, meaning buttons, um, widgets. So, for example, if we're looking at this Keynote, right, and we were a UI developer for it, I would be developing the code for this button here, right? This drop down, the functionality that's involved, stuff that you would see in a style guide is generally
Yeah.
what I assume like UI is typically like GUI, GUIs, right? It was defined really by the interface of it and the language it had. Um, but another great tool is ask people who's on your team, right? And who do you
Mhm.
hand stuff off to? And if there's already a developer, like a solid developer that you're already working with, then maybe they would do more of the heavy lifting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, a bunch of different questions to ask. Let's see. You mentioned something when talking about not accepting all feedback about folks that perpetuate prejudice in work environments to become more like the leaders they've been working under, and that resonated with me. Definitely explains the behavior of some works I worked with before. Yeah. Yeah. It's same thing with like everything in life, right? And love, relationships, and just so many things. A lot of the times people end up perpetuating the trauma as a way of thinking that that's how they've overcome it, you know? And I think the hardest part as we think about how do we break these cyclical patterns of trauma is to let go of it. Sometimes it's also the letting go of feeling the need to be vindicated, validated. Uh, that ends up unfortunately spinning that cycle. Yeah. I mean, I open it up to you, Sabrina. Is there anything else that you want to say with that?
Not particularly. I just
Mm,
wanted to, it was just one of the things that you mentioned that kind of gave me one of those aha moments like,
mm.
oh my God, it makes so much sense.
Yeah, yeah. You see this often with a lot of people just taking on masculine roles even at work because it's a lot of, macho, happening, especially in a corporate environment. And you see this happening often with women first, where a lot of women leaders, right? Why they, you know, are very difficult with other women is because they start taking on these roles of their aggressors, thinking that if that's the way that they are, up there, right, that's how I have to act. And a lot of it is dismantling that. Same thing with homophobia, right? Thinking through toxic masculine cultures and just the way people are, if that's the way the leaders are, and you envision yourself to be a leader one day, starting to take on those types of characteristics. We also see this happening in even just like the schoolyard example, right? Where, all of us, we have experiences of trying to fit in with the crowd, right? To not get bullied or teased. We end up inheriting their characteristics of our aggressors because we just want to almost just go with the flow, just to be invisible, And so, no solution per se to act on it, but I think it's just a good reminder to just say it's okay to not have to accept the feedback, but you're here to do the job, right? It's definitely, it's not to silence you in any way, but it's starting to be able to distance yourself from taking and inheriting maybe the traumas that other people faced onto you, uh, easier said than done, right? But if people come from a very negative place, don't have the best interests of you in mind, meaning if somebody's giving you feedback, if it's not meant to grow you, develop you, or help the work, and it's just negative, then they're not coming from a place of trying to help you, elevate you or your voice. And with that, my recommendation is take it with a grain of salt. Say, hey, I'm going to take this, I'm going to use it so that we can get this job done right here. But for myself, who I am, how I define myself, I don't need to let that define who I am. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, any other last lingering questions? Yeah. UX consulting. Let me bump out. May I ask if you are aware of UX consulting and what that could look like? Different ways, right? It is what you make of it as a consultant. Whatever you want to do that brings you passion, that you see as an opportunity that a lot of businesses don't excel at, that is where you should just go gung ho. And just like UX, definitely when you use it very broadly, you're going to get a lot of people, again, because people don't even know how to label in job descriptions, right? You're going to get all these people who come in seeing that label, and what you're going to get is having to just weed through the people to find the people you want to work with. But in terms of just consulting, it can be just doing the work, doing wireframes, doing research. It could be helping them with advice, but it's usually harder to find roles where you can just advise people unless you have a long track record of success, because that's what people are paying consultants for usually. And so my recommendation is, especially when you're starting, go in at the ground level to say, hey, let me help you with a couple tactical things, execute on research, wires, designs, whatever it is. And then here are my little trinkets of advice, thoughts, and then sell yourself that way. Yeah. Someone new to UX, something struggling with keeping up the pace of design projects, naturally tend to take things in my creation process. Has anyone had similar temperament, success with adapting to these fast moving design environments? I think this will be a good segue to just open it up to the group after. And I would love Sterling's input on this too. Tasty. But my answer to this is a couple things. I think this touches on our perfectionism mentality, where especially as designers, we want to go off in a cave, right? Do everything perfect and come out with this like fully, flushed out, everything is grand, sound the trumpets, open the parade, this is perfect, right? We're like, oh my God, I feel so good, But let me tell you, like, that does not happen, And the perfectionism mentality, it comes from a place of, usually when we want to be perfectionists, it's because in our previous life, we've had issues with, being accepted and having to be perfect as a way to be loved. And it's a defense mechanism. And when we can unravel it and just see the things as what it is, right? Then we're able to execute on the little tactical deliverables for what it is. Of course, people will love you for your work, and you should also accept the fact that people will love you for your work in the baby steps that it's going to take too. So with that, I think a little bit adapting is understanding your relationships with perfectionism. How does that look like? But if it's also working with other people, right? I think it's also asking yourself the question of how do I slot into their process a lot quicker, right? So it could start off as, hi, I'm going to sketch something out in like a pencil format, just like really ugly. And in the next few hours, I'm going to show that to the people and get some advice, get some feedback. If it's more of like just the wireframing that's taking a long time, my recommendation is just practice, right? Practice makes perfect. It's like painting. The more you paint, the better you'll get faster, right? Color theory, all that. But especially for me too, it's been letting go of this perfectionism mentality of just being okay with scribbling something on a notepad and showing people that. But also, don't scribble something on a notepad, get it in front of someone after like 3 days have passed by too. So you want to do that early on, right? Same day, maybe in the morning you get something, and then by the end of the day you have like some thoughts scribbled together and you give it to them. Yeah, that's my recommendation. I'm gonna pass it over to Sterling. Do you have any thoughts on this? Yeah, I'd love to see if you have any.
Yeah, I think you kind of said everything. I call myself a recovering perfectionist. Um, and when I was younger, I used to think that my perfectionism was a good thing. And like you said, it's just a defense mechanism. Like growing up, you learn to get love and attention through high performance. And so now you don't want anybody to see you until you're perfect. But that perfection never comes, right? So then you're just always hiding. You're never really showing up for the work. So I really think you touched on everything. I love that. Yeah.
Awesome. Anyone else have any thoughts, feedback on yeah, how to keep up with the pace of design projects?
I can relate as well to like wanting to do my projects perfectly. Actually, with one of my first design mentors, like they were telling me, like, you really need to drop that because you're going to be reiterating so much anyway, and that's a part of the UX process. Um, I don't know if it really got to me yet, but I know that it's something I need to work on. But as far as like timelines, I think if you're doing like a online program or boot camp type of thing, like I've done, I found that doing Trello helps with kind of like putting all of your tasks onto the little table to see like what can I complete this week, and it's really satisfying for me at least to just check it off or like drag it to like a done box just to see that it's complete, it's out of the way, that kind of thing. So maybe if you have something like visual like that where you can see like that's done, like I can check this off, or like I have to do this today, it could help out with trying to do things on time.
Great feedback. Anyone else have any thoughts or inputs for that one in particular before we jump over to Sabrina? Or any thoughts about perfectionism mentality? Does this resonate with everyone? Yeah. Yeah. I think especially, I do a lot of work with a lot of immigrants and a lot of second generation people, and we do carry a lot of trauma, especially from our immigrant parents or immigrant family members who had to come here, right, to the United States or wherever to try to set up a livelihood. But also you can't make any mistakes. You can't go to jail. You can't, look police officers the wrong way. You have to do so many things to be perfect, to be able to get a green card, a visa, a citizenship, right? The ultimate test. And so when we have family trauma inherited having to be perfect, there is a lived trauma that continues on for generations and generations after. So even the way we're scolded as kids, right? We are scolded in the way that allowed our parents to flourish, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily right. It worked for them, but it's because of the larger picture that wasn't correct, right? Where people shouldn't have to be treated such a way to be able to live in a country, live, just like, it's just so crazy that we have like borders and stuff like that. It's just land is land, but a little bit of that, I think, especially for me, has been a huge opportunity to just bring forgiveness and peace and more understanding, to understand why, especially for our community, like why we especially are so hard on ourselves, right? Why we're so perfectionists all the time, because it is very pervasive in just the way we've had to survive. Yeah. Thanks, Gia. And then Sabrina, following up question, becoming more okay with scribbles and thoughts organized when they come up, especially when they're different kinds of forms, ideas. Yeah. It's just putting it onto a format. So my recommendation is if you're able to put it in like a presentation format, especially with everyone on Zoom and digital world, it usually helps people. Being able to reference it very quickly. What helps is just scribbling on some stuff and then maybe taking a picture with the phone and then clipping parts of it into some sort of organized fashion on the computer, whether it's like, you start categorizing things or you create a flow with it, right? To give it a little bit of oomph or logic, allows people to digest it a lot easier. What works for me, it might work differently for people, but I'm all over the paper, I'm just like, and then I basically clip little pieces and I just make it a little bit more clean. And then what you can do is even like little bits of pieces that you scribble together, give it a little bit of annotation below it as you present and walk through it. Yeah, give it some more color. Yeah. Yeah, awesome. Great. These are great points. Yeah, I echo so much everyone's sentiments. This is the reason why this organization exists. So that we can come together to talk about these things.